But what I finally realized and really kind of made Gojira click into place for me is that in metal, it's different. In metal, it is all about the riffs. What's up, everybody? I'm Finn McKenty. This is the Punk Rock MBA, and today we are here to talk about a band that I know a lot of you guys love very much, and that is Gojira. And specifically, why exactly this band is more popular than I really ever thought they could or would be. And what I mean is this: it is no surprise to me when bands like Bring Me the Horizon or Ghost or Slipknot or whatever blow up, because they check all the boxes. Number one, charismatic front person with a big personality, accessible music with lots of catchy hooks and big choruses that you can sing along to, and some kind of like crazy larger than life imagery. But that is exactly why the success of Gojira has kind of puzzled me for so long. If you're not familiar with them, they're a French metal band that sounds like this.
Another day in the dark.
Without any, big choruses or anything like that sings about flying whales and environmentalism. The guys in the band are very low key, they're not out there starting beef with rappers or whatever. And so they don't do all the things that you're quote unquote supposed to do. And yet they're crushing it. There are well over 1 million monthly listeners on Spotify. They headline arena tours in Europe, played to big crowds in America. And seemingly everybody in pretty much every corner of the metal world worships them. But after thinking about it, I finally get it. I finally understood the secret to their success. And that secret ingredient says some very interesting things about metal fans and their psychology, which I will explain in this video. But first, if you haven't checked me out on Twitch, I'm live streaming twice a week from 4 to 7 p.m. Pacific on Tuesdays and Thursdays. There's a link to that in the description of this video. But first, I want to thank Honey for sponsoring this video. Honey is actually the #1 shopping tool in America. You've probably already heard of it, but just in case you haven't, it's an amazing online shopping tool that searches for promo codes so you don't have to. And what's great is you don't really have to change anything about how you shop or what you're shopping for, because it works for the things that you're already buying on tons of the sites that you're already shopping on for all kinds of stuff like shoes or clothes or video games or really just about anything. And it is so easy to use that there's literally no reason not to use it. It's as simple as that. And it works. On average, Honey finds discounts of 18%. That is legit. And honestly, Honey is kind of fun to use. Like when it finds a promo code and you see the discount applied, you kind of get a little bit of a rush, right? So if that sounds cool to you, and it probably should, why not try Honey today? You can add it to your browser for free at joinhoney.com/rock, or just click the link in the description of this video to support the channel. First of all, let me just kind of bring everybody up to speed on their history and their career for anyone who may not be familiar. Gojira started way back in 1996 in France and released their first album in 2001, which is kind of like maybe Morbid Angel meets Sepultura or something. And although I wouldn't say that album was like amazing, and it was obviously very low budget, it was definitely good, and you could totally see their potential. Their second album came out in 2003, it's called The Link, and kind of continued in that same direction, but just better in every way. And this is when you could really see that Gojira was more than just your average death metal band. And I remember hearing their name a little bit back then on forums and stuff, but it wasn't until their third album that they really perfected their sound and really started to get traction internationally. This is the album where all their trademark elements really came together. Those heavy, groovy riffs, the pick scrapes, Mario's insanely tight drumming, Joe's style of pitched, screaming kind of vocals, which everybody does now, but were very uncommon back then. And it's also where the environmentalist themes in their music really came to the forefront. Like, I remember seeing the cover art with a flying whale on it, and there was also a song called Flying Whales, and I was like, all right, well, this is different. And as somebody who grew up on vegan vegan straight edge bands like Earth Crisis and Vegan Reich, I was immediately more receptive to songs like Ocean Planet and Global Warming than the usual like kind of cheesy metal imagery of like war and demons and whatever kind of edgy stuff the standard metal bands talk about. It was immediately obvious that these guys were much more thoughtful and coming from a very different place than your typical metal band. And this album got pretty much universal praise from critics, reviewers, and fans as far as I can remember. And if I had to point to just sort of one moment in time as their breakthrough, it would be 2006. This is when they signed to Prosthetic Records, who would put out the first two Lamb of God albums, which got them exposure to an American audience for the first time at that kind of scale, and also when they had a few really critical festival appearances. The first is when they got the call to replace Mastodon on the main stage of Download, which is one of the most important festivals in the UK, and the second was playing the main stage of Hellfest in France. Both of these are massive, super influential festivals and got them in front of tens of thousands of exactly the right kind of metal fans. And they made an incredible first impression on everybody who saw them at either one of those festivals. Like if you watch the live footage of them at Hellfest that year, it's pretty amazing. I'm someone who basically can't stand live recordings 99% of the time, but I would say that the live versions of these songs kind of sound better than the recorded ones. Like that is a very, very rare thing. And all of that stuff that happened in 2006, that was kind of the first domino that knocked over the other dominoes that would take their career to the next level. The first of those dominoes was Lamb of God, taking them out on their US tour with Trivium and Machine Head, right when Lamb of God was like on fire. This was right after Sacrament had come out and hit number 8 on Billboard. And Lamb of God was really like the perfect band to introduce Gojira to an American audience. Although sometimes you hear people talk about Lamb of God now almost as though they're like some kind of like redneck band for guys in the army to push mosh to. And maybe to some extent, you know, they are that, but really they're not. They come from the punk and hardcore scene, so I think ideologically they're much more aligned with Gojira, and they sort of fit musically as well. They play very rhythmically complex, but also heavy kind of groove metal, I guess you would call it. I think of them almost as like the less moody, more chuggy, like angry version of Gojira, like if Gojira woke up in a bad mood. And next, the opportunity that every metal band dreams of, Metallica took them out on the World Magnetic Tour in 2009, which number one put them in front of massive audiences, but I think also really just sort of made the guys in Gojira believe in themselves, like made them believe that they belonged on stages at that level.
We feel blessed. They make us feel important when they talk to us and stuff, so it's very rewarding and it's a very nice feeling.
And in the middle of all that, they put out what I would personally consider to be their best album, The Way of All Flesh. And over the next several years, they basically just kept grinding and slowly but surely getting a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger every year. Eventually signing to Roadrunner for this album, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce because I'm not going to embarrass myself by trying to say French words. But that came out in 2011 and hit number 34 on Billboard. Their next big breakthrough was in 2012 when they went out with Metallica again, this time playing to stadiums full of as many as like 75,000 people. And they just kept going. Their next album, Magma, went to number 24 on Billboard. And although I personally don't like it as much because they went a little bit more like rock, kind of more like moody and melodic, less heavy, I can say that objectively it's very well done. Which brings us to their most recent album, Fortitude, that continued in that more quote-unquote rock direction, almost like a heavier Mastodon, and went to number 12 on Billboard. So here they are 20 years deep into their career, and they are bigger than ever. And they've really cemented their status as one of the staple, definitive bands in modern metal. Headlining festivals and arena tours in Europe, they got a Grammy nomination, and they're pretty much universally loved by fans and critics. Like, you're not gonna find anybody in metal that has anything bad to say about Gojira. So with all of that being said, I've always found their success and popularity to be a little bit of a mystery, a little bit surprising, because like I said in the beginning, they don't really check a lot of the boxes that you would expect for a band that hit number 12 on Billboard. But after thinking about it a bit, I think I finally get it. So the first thing that really kind of stands out to me is that they don't really have particularly strong vocals or vocal hooks, which is not to say that Joe is a bad vocalist or anything like that, because he isn't. He's very good at that pitched screaming kind of style. I just mean that compared to a band like Slipknot or Bring Me the Horizon, or obviously like Linkin Park or whatever, there aren't a lot of like big choruses that you want to sing along to, right? That's just not what Gojira does. And for most people, that is what defines a catchy song. Like if you mention Pantera, most people, most mainstream people anyway, are gonna sing the chorus to Walk or Cowboys from Hell. Or to make it even more obvious, look at pop. How many people even know what the instrumental melody to, any given Katy Perry song is? They don't even pay attention to that. The only thing that most people remember or pay attention to are the lyrics and melody of the chorus. But what I finally realized and really kind of made Gojira click into place for me is that in metal, it's different. In metal, it is all about the riffs. The riffs are the hook. Because what I realized is that metal fans kind of don't really care that much about the vocals, for the most part. It's almost like an inversion of pop, where in metal, the riffs are the hook, and the vocals are just kind of there to support what the rest of the band is doing. And I personally find this fascinating because this is just not fundamentally how I listen to music. I am very much into pop song structures, big vocal hooks. I care a lot about lyrics, which is probably why my tastes are so different from most metal fans who don't really care about all that and mostly just want to hear some cool riffs. And I'm not saying that one of those is better or worse than the other. Like the way that you listen to music is the way you listen to music, and there's no right or wrong way to enjoy music. I'm just saying that these are very different ways of listening. And that explains why, to me, Gojira's songwriting is maybe a little bit lacking, but to metal fans, their songwriting is amazing because I want vocals and metal fans want riffs. As a few examples of, kind of roughly comparable bands that I think might further prove my point, look at Lamb of God, Meshuggah, Behemoth, Trivium, the list goes on. Those bands all have good vocalists, don't get me wrong, but you listen to them for the riffs, right? Not some like big hooky chorus. And whether you like Gojira or not, I think you have to admit that one thing they definitely have is just massive monster riffs supported by equally massive grooves, thanks to Mario's drumming, which is some of the tightest, tastiest, grooviest drumming that you're gonna find in metal. And so what that all adds up to is that they're kind of the perfect balance of progressive and technical, but at the same time, very accessible. It's almost like Morbid Angel meets Machine Head or something.
Lie awake, just cannot move my arms and legs are paralyzed. Don't recall how to free myself from this.
It's a very difficult balance to find, but I think they've done it. Another thing that kind of puzzled me is that they really don't do a lot of the things that I've talked about as being important from a marketing perspective. They're not super active on social media. They don't have huge personalities or any kind of like crazy image. Their videos are fairly normal metal videos. It's not like 6ix9ine or Attila or something. They're really just like chill, thoughtful guys who really don't try to be anything more than that. And so what that all adds up to is this, that like on the one hand, they're the band's band that's loved by musicians, but unlike other bands that are loved by musicians, like say Between the Buried and Me or Chon, Gojira is also accessible enough that when a band like Metallica or Lamb of God takes them out and introduces them to an audience of more or less like mainstream metal fans, those fans can get into it too, not just the music nerds in the audience, which all adds up to make them the perfect band to fit into their slot of what you would call the metal iceberg. At the top of the iceberg, you have your basic entry-level bands like Metallica, Slipknot, Linkin Park, Korn, and Megadeth. And at the bottom of the iceberg, way down in those cold, dark, lonely depths, that's where you find all that super weird underground stuff like gore grind and slam and all that kind of stuff. But what about in the middle of the iceberg? How does someone go from Metallica to Cerebral Incubation? This is exactly where Gojira fits, I think. They are the perfect bridge between that basic Ozfest kind of stuff and the more extreme underground bands. And will they ever be as big as Slipknot or Limp Bizkit? No, but do they need to be? Again, I would say no. I mean, they've built an amazing career doing things their way without having to make any kind of compromises in the name of marketability. And really, what more could an artist want than that? But to me, the biggest takeaway is that their career really highlights the difference between what metal fans want and what fans of most other genres want. In most other genres, it really is all about the vocals, especially those big hooky choruses with some kind of catchy lyrics and a charismatic, larger-than-life frontman who sings them. And everything else is basically secondary to those elements. And don't get me wrong, there are definitely tons of amazing musicians in other genres. I mean, like take Aaron Spears, for example, one of the best drummers on the planet. He plays like pop and gospel, that kind of stuff, for artists like Usher. But musicianship is not really something that's gonna get you new fans in other genres like pop or country, right? Like having a great drummer is not gonna make Usher any more popular, but in metal, it will. I mean, if you ask people about Mudvayne, for example, they did that with their bassist, and I think the same is true with Gojira and their drummer. If you ask Gojira fans why they're great, a lot of those people are gonna say the drumming. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not going back on what I said before. I still think that hooks and image and charismatic frontman are still important, because if you look at the biggest metal or metal-ish bands like, say, Linkin Park or Bring Me the Horizon, who kind of semi-crossover into mainstream pop culture, the ones at the top of that metal iceberg, they do fit that formula of pop song structures with big vocal hooks and a charismatic, larger-than-life front person. But after that, most of the bands further down the iceberg really kind of don't fit that formula, because the core metal fans, they really just don't care about that stuff. They hear music differently than fans in other genres. I think they primarily care about three things. Number one, great riffs. Number two, musicians with really good technique. And number three, bands that can play all of that live at a high level. And Gojira definitely check all three of those boxes. And so with all of that in mind, their popularity actually makes perfect sense. And although I personally don't really listen to their music, I am a fan of the band. They seem like great guys who've just worked their asses off for over 20 years now, and it's always cool to see that kind of just old school work ethic pay off like it has for them. All right, my friends, that does it for this video about Gojira. As always, let me know what you think in the comments. Also, I want to thank everyone who supports me on Patreon, especially those of you who support at the True Cult level or above. Patrons get access to all my podcasts a week early. I do giveaways, I do Q&As. If you want me to review your music or artwork or video or anything else live on Twitch, you can do that too. Join at the $10 and up level. Every month I do a call for submissions. If you want me to review something, all you gotta do is drop it in the comments of that post. Then I will do the review live on Twitch and post it on Patreon for everyone to see. So if that sounds cool, check it out at the link in the description of this video. And with that, I'm gonna sign off for now, but I will see you next time.